Greetings. Welcome to Speak Nerd and Enter.
Welcome to Speak Nerd and Enter. What are we talking about, guys?
Well done,
You know, Kelly, I want to let you know, by the way, I was informed that you are a favorite of one of our fans.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yes.
You're the favorite recurring cast member, if you will. You're like would it be Joey or Chandler? I don't know. I guess it's whichever one you like.
I'd rather be Joey, I think.
Let's say
Less
Joey.
drugs.
Yeah.
Very divisive, but apparently enjoyed manically by one of our fans.
Which
right.
fan?
Fan? The fan?
That would be my wife.
Oh, right on.
We had dinner with Paul the other night when he was in town, and she was like, "Kelly's my favorite." And I was like, "What? That's me?" She goes, "No, definitely Kelly."
Knowing nod.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably my long silences where I don't have anything to say.
No, you know what she said? She said that she's so glad. So many times she says, "Oh, I'm so glad Kelly said that. I was hoping somebody was going to say that."
Oh, now I feel pressured.
Yeah, that is exactly.
Welcome to my world.
You made that choice, sir.
You're already legally. You're already.
I was there. I witnessed
bound.
it.
All right, seriously, what are we talking about?
All right,
Yeah.
Mark,
What are we talking about?
Mark,
Kelly.
you tried to talk to me about a couple of the books that you finished, and I really wanted to talk to you about it here, though. You just finished Prospero Burns and Thousand Suns.
Yes.
So
Thousand Suns first, and then Prospero Burns.
And I thought those two were really intriguing books, so I wanted to get your opinion on those. I know Rich has already read those, right?
Yes.
I really have one lead-off question for you, Mark. Do you now agree with Rich and I that the Emperor is the core of the problem?
Let me think about that one. I'm going to come back to that. Let's talk about the books for a second. Yeah. So, like, I read Thousand Suns, and I thoroughly enjoyed that. Like, that was a great book. I could see where everything was going. By the end of it, I was like, man, now I want to play a Thousand Suns army. Right. And so then when I read Prospero Burns, I was like, oh, this is going to be cool. We're going to get the tail end of it. But the, sacking of Prospero literally is like the last couple pages of the book. Right. So most of it is all before that. And so, like, mentally, I wasn't, ready for this kind of slow burn. And I'm like, what's going on? Like, some of the characters, like, they weren't, it was almost like he wasn't a remembrancer, but he was like a Space Wolf version of a remembrancer, kind of thing. And I'm like, who's this guy? What's he doing in there, kind of thing. And it was a slow burn. And I was wanting to see the sacking of Prospero from the other side, but there was so much other stuff that mentally I was expecting one thing and I wasn't getting it. Having said that, it was an amazing book for what it was. And I'm listening to it and I really loved the way they tied a lot of the stuff together. You're like, who's this guy and who's that guy? And then by the time, like I say, I've said it before, I'm listening to another book as well by an author that I know, like I've met personally, and he's not that great of an author. And the narrator is terrible. You know what I mean? And if I didn't know the guy and wanting to support him, I probably would have given up on this book. But every time I do one of these Black Library books, they're freaking amazing. You know what I mean? So, like, the narration is good. The writing is really, really good. Much better than I've expected across the board. And I'm like, well, great. Now I want to play a Space Wolves army too. So, like I say, I thoroughly enjoyed both of them, even though the second one was a bit of a slow start. But that was more from didn't know what I was getting into when I started the book. I just jumped in. So, but I really, Mark, like both of them.
I want to say I agree with you on that point. I mean, there's been books where I know the subject of the book, and it's it's really fancy. You really want to get into it. You appreciate the person who wrote the book, but the narrator of the book can really just be awful, and it's painful to try to even get through it. So I agree with you on that point about Black Library. Even the books where I've been like, the narration in the book has been really good. I'll give them that.
Talent's excellent. It is.
Oh really without a doubt.
This, by the way, is Kelly trying to play up to Mark's wife right now.
I'm glad you said that.
This episode is dedicated to her.
So
No.
yeah, I enjoyed them. Trying to think which one I'm, because I just finished and now I'm trying to like finish up this book that I'm not really into, and then jump back into one of those. And it'll probably be the oh god, Saturnine, I think is the next one that I have to
Yeah.
read. So
Yeah,
that's probably going to
Saturn.
be the next one I jump into.
So, Mark, let me ask you. So, was Magnus right or was Magnus wrong? Like, so now that you've read that and you understand like all the forces that were in play, do you think that Magnus was justified in what he did and the way he behaved, or do you think that he was just a dead ass traitor like everyone else?
No, Magnus did nothing wrong.
Oh, really? Interesting. Interesting. I think Magnus did everything wrong. Personally.
Now listen, look, the Emperor suffers from Three's Company syndrome. Okay, like they have this Council of Nicaea. I know it's not called Nicaea, but whatever the big council was, and he's like, no, yeah, Nicaea, like no, all of you people who I've created with these great psychic powers, don't you dare use them. And he didn't say why. He didn't warn them of the danger. He didn't say, hey, you're going to mess up these other things that I'm doing if you do it. He was just like, don't do that, or it's bad. And he didn't tell him. He didn't share any information with them, and that's his fault.
See,
You know what I'm saying?
I think that's
Hmm.
because the Emperor is in cahoots with Chaos. Is
Mm.
that he created him and said,
That's
whatever
a
you do.
long step.
Well,
That's
it's
a long
that
step,
thing
buddy.
about it's about that thing. You create these beings and you have that big red button and you say, whatever you do, don't press that button.
Don't touch the button.
And of course they're going to touch the button. You know? So
yeah, like you're going to literally expect an entire Space Marine Legion of psychers to stop being psychers.
I mean,
like that doesn't make sense to me. I'm like, that's how you do. It's like, hey, Space Wolves, we need you to stop killing people viciously.
You'll remember in past episodes I brought up that point that they were created to fail because of the way that the Thousand Sons were made and that way Magnus was made, that he was born to lose, right? That he was created to fail. But at the same time, I like the idea that the Emperor created him he made him to be the best at what he did, which was interact with the war, right? Because Magnus, after the Emperor, was probably the most powerful psyker around. But it's kind of a test, right? It's the test to see whether he'll fall to the predations that he knows are there, and he failed. Magnus's biggest problem, in my opinion, was his pride. He could never admit to himself that he willingly joined in with Tzeentch. He gave himself up. That's that one little scene that they have where he first talks to the first demon, and he very much hides that from everybody. Hides it from Ahriman. Ahriman had big beef with him over that. That the fact that he wouldn't admit that he gave him up to stop the flesh change. So I think Magnus. I used to be in your camp, Mark. I used to think that very much that Magnus was kind of badly painted and poorly created. But now that I look back on it, seeing all the other stuff that we've read,
now that you've turned from the truth of the Emperor.
No, now that I've joined the truth of the Emperor, honestly, my righteous zeal is very much
because the Inquisition is there protecting Magnus and stuff.
Yeah, they are not as they torture guys in their dungeons. But I very much kind of turn to the fact that I think Magnus, he's just a prideful creature that went wrong.
Well, I think, I mean, look, and I am not a fan of the Emperor, but I'm going to come to his defense ever so slightly here. Is that when he created the Primarchs and
Primarch
and their pastiche.
I've submitted on this one. It's Primarch.
We have consensus.
When they were created, I mean, they were what they were, and we'll never know what that was because the pathway deviated, right? They were scattered. They were touched by the warp, and whatever the Emperor got back, whatever he got back, he got back. And so I think there again, I mean, it's easy for me to sit here and blame the Emperor for the creation of the Primarchs and the way that it all went pear-shaped, but there is an element to whatever the Emperor had intended was perverted from its original path, and I mean that just is what it is.
Maybe.
That being said, I still think there are elements of the creation of the Primarchs that, could have inevitably just gone this way anyway.
Right,
So
but the Emperor didn't scatter the Primarchs.
no,
Urda did.
yeah, Urda did. Yeah.
Urda.
Right, but I'm saying like he created these and being like, oh, he shouldn't have done X, Y, and Z. I'm just saying it would have been a whole different thing had they not been scattered and that he had raised them like the loving children that they were.
Oh, they're just weapons, sir. They're bullets and
Well,
guns. That's all they are.
It'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see. I'm not going to do like Rich. I'm not going to give opinions on that stuff right now. I'm not going to do it anymore.
Good. We
I'm
wouldn't
gonna
want to
sit-
do that on a podcast and give
I want
opinions
to
on
sit
things.
and listen to you guys as you go through the story, because you're going through each of the chapters of the story, and each of them reveals different things, talks about different things from different perspectives and stuff, so that by the time you get to the end, it'll be interesting to see where you sit, if it's the same place, if it's nuanced, if it's, how it is. And I'm very much enjoying listening to the reasoning that each of you has, and how it's altering and changing from different spots. Not too much.
Mhm.
It stayed pretty much the same, but altered a little bit in different parts. And
It is
as you're going
enjoyable to
through.
hear right thinking, isn't it, Sean?
That's what I hear 24 hours a day. Yeah.
Yeah.
From
Yeah,
himself
I
internally.
live in-
It's in his mind.
Yeah, I live in bliss, 24 hours. So, I don't know how else I would describe that. When you're in eternal bliss, I don't know as you're aware of it as much. But as I've gotten older and realized just, what that's like and how rare that is, yeah, I think I am.
Every day a
Yeah.
Shangri-La.
Well, I have
Congratulations.
to say, my thinking.
It's
my
just
thinking,
me and Homer Simpson.
My thinking on Magnus has definitely changed 180 degrees in the other direction. I was very much, but after having read his interactions with other Primarchs and the Emperor,
See,
I've definitely
especially for
changed
him.
my mind.
That's why I want you guys to read The Fury of Magnus, is because his story arc I thought was really intriguing. His and Vulcan's were really interesting to me because Vulcan's never had an arc before, right? When
Yeah.
they had the Horus Heresy, he just kind of disappeared. Nobody really knew what he did or any of that. He was kind of a background character,
Yeah.
and he's become this
He's a fulcrum.
very very central piece
Yeah.
to the story. And I dig how they've kind of changed that. And Magnus, his was the same way. I'm actually fairly sympathetic to the character, and it's been intriguing seeing how they took this character that I remember sitting at lunch with Drew and a couple guys from GW, that's Games Workshop, and we were having lunch up by headquarters, and we'd gotten around to talking about the Primarchs. And I remember Drew, he said he didn't have much of an opinion on any of them except for Magnus. He made a point of saying that he felt like Magnus got screwed, because at the time it was just Magnus showed up and tried to warn the Emperor, and the Emperor got pissed because he used psionics to try to warn him about the Horus Heresy, and then had his planet burned and all that. And it was fairly straightforward in the way it was described and the information that was given and all that. And you felt like, man, that's kind of screwed up. Dude just tried to warn you, and you're sitting there, burnt. You don't even want to hear it. Don't even want to hear it. Go out and burn them up.
You broke the rules.
And they've really taken what was a very simple, straightforward story, and they've added a lot of complexity to it.
Mhm.
I thought they really did a good job with it, and I thought those two books were
Yeah, it
excellent
gave
for
you
that.
both perspectives, and you identified with both of them. Like, I don't think
Yeah.
reading the one,
Yeah.
you were like, oh, these guys are so wrong, and reading the others, you're like, oh, no, they shouldn't do that. Like, you were sympathetic to both points of view on, whether they did the right thing or not the right thing, or whether,
And it's especially tragic when you consider the Emperor never ordered that. Never. That was never supposed to happen. And
Who screwed up the order?
well, Horus took it as an opportunity, and it's just, I always thought that was very tragic, how they turned this very oversimplified thing into a tragedy.
Yeah.
I thought that was really good.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's tragic on all sides, and that's the thing, is you can sympathize with every character. You can sympathize with Horus. You can sympathize with Abaddon. You can sympathize with Conrad Kurz. I mean, I've seen people.
Conrad Conrad. Conrad's an intriguing character.
He is,
but I do not sympathize or empathize with him.
It's not, but the point is, you could see his point of view. Is what I'm saying. Is
His
you
book,
can.
his book, by the way, guys, Mark and Kelly, because I know you haven't read that. His Primarch book, that is something. That is something. That is something else.
And what is the name of this book?
What was
Conrad
the name?
and Friends.
I think, isn't it?
I think it's just Kurtz or something.
Yeah,
like that.
Kurtz. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm actually I'm listening to one of the short stories in Shadows of Treachery, which is it's about Conrad Kurz, and he's basically, for anyone who doesn't know, he's the Primarch of the Night Lords, and he's Batman. He's basically Batman.
He's like a mashup of Batman. Well, he's a
Batman and the
mashup-
Punisher.
No, not the Punisher had rules. He's more like a mashup of Rorschach and Hannibal Lecter.
Okay, I see where you're going with that. Yeah, but he definitely has Batman overtones.
Yeah, well, it started that way.
Yeah.
But just wacky. Which I'm not saying it was bad. It was intriguing to me. I actually enjoyed that a lot. But it was way different. And if you want to poke holes in somebody's thoughts about the Emperor, ask him, what was he thinking with that dude?
Yeah.
What the hell was that all about?
Because there's some people that argue that he's still a loyalist.
Right. Well, I also don't think you guys are like, what was the Emperor thinking? Look, man, when you have a child, which I believe all of us have. I mean, the DNA tests aren't back, but whatever. Let's just, you have a child, like, you don't get to choose their personality and like who they are.
No,
you know what I'm saying? Like, they're so you can't be like, oh man, the Emperor really screwed that up. Like, no,
but he doesn't look at them as children.
That's not what I was talking about. And I know that it kind of well, I don't know if it spoils it, but each of the Primarchs was imbued with certain things that made them special, like Sanguinius, the ability to have some foresight, and that. Conrad had kind of the same thing.
Yeah, his was actually better than Sanguinius.
His felt more like a curse,
But it was more focused, is what I'm saying. It was less. He had more direct, like, knowledge.
Yeah, his had specificity to it.
Yeah.
Well.
Yeah, but the real question is how much was nature and how much is nurture?
But anyway, that's what I meant about asking. I was like, man, what about that dude? Why that?
Yeah.
But I suppose he was the antithesis of like Vulcan.
Yeah.
But as far as Magnus goes, I found him to be an extremely empathetic character.
I did too.
He seemed so caring. He was thoughtful. Yes, I think, prideful, like you were talking about, Rich, and all that, but such a great character study of him, and that story arc. I thought they did a wonderful job at fleshing that out. I really did.
The biggest thing that changed my mind on Magnus was the fact that when it was revealed that he kept lying to everybody about what happened. He kept saying, he would never admit that he actually made that. He took the step. He's like, I'm going to go with you, Zinch, to save my guys from the flesh curse, and it's going to happen.
Yeah, indeed.
And a secret in his heart, and that was the.
And exactly those
We lost you, brother.
And exactly.
It showed him for the selfless father that he was.
All right. Yes. Can you hear me now?
I do, yeah.
I hate the fact that this, like, when I make a point, it dips out on me.
Yeah, we should be telling him about the mute button I keep hitting every time he gets on a roll.
I would not be. I would find that to be a more plausible explanation. But it's the fact that he would never admit his actual step that he took to go to chaos. He traded his soul basically, and then he wouldn't admit it. He kept.
Right. Well, I hear you, but he didn't go to chaos. Like the Space Wolves literally descended on his planet and was murdering everyone, and he didn't go to chaos.
He's talking about before that. Yeah, he's talking about before that.
Talking about when he traded to cure the flesh curse.
But that's part of what makes him empathetic, I think, is that he really just wanted to do good, and he really loved.
He tried.
Right, but he made a devil's bargain. That's not the same thing as I dedicate myself to chaos henceforth and forever.
Well, but it is if you don't admit it. That's the thing.
He
It's
was
like you say,
duped.
I made the devil's bargain, but now I'm gonna lie that I didn't actually do it. It's I don't know why this is happening. This is just
You know,
crazy.
I actually find that part of him. I actually find that part of him to be the most human, because
No, I
It's
agree with
very
that.
human. Yes.
because you make
Very
those
human.
mistakes, and you don't want to let people down. You don't want to be the failure. You don't want to be seen as weak. You don't want, all these things. You want to show the better part of yourself, and you think people think better of you, and you're afraid you're going to let them down and stuff like
I
that.
agree.
There's
So
so
he's-
much
I
that goes
agree.
into it.
So
What's
he's
that?
trying to be everything to everybody instead of just being himself to himself.
I do think there was a bit of that in Magnus.
In all the Primarchs are more like they're like the ultimate servant because their entire legion depends on them. So they all look to them. They're forced to actually kind of submit themselves to the Primarch. So the fact that they feel that obligation to their gene sons, right, is it is a fascinating and a human thing. And I agree with you, Sean. It's very human that they do that. But at the same time, you see the effect that the loyalists versus the traitors, how it actually turned out.
But I think you make a really valid point there, Rich, is that aspect that look, these Primarchs, when they were scattered hither and yon, they life continued for them. They had like a whole thing that happened. They became whatever leaders of whatever worlds they were on, and then out of the blue, some people show up and say, "Oh, by the way, yeah, you got to come with us because we're trying to take over the universe." And and then you find elements of that aren't explained to you in total. I mean, and then you have this entire Space Marine Legion looking to you. I mean, it looks like a construct of something where somebody really tried to patch something back together, and it really didn't work in the end. I mean, you got these folks falling to chaos. You have them then leading this whole siege of Terra. I don't know. I feel like the Emperor, in trying to cobble back together whatever the Primarch program was that he had intended, uh, he tried to do the best he could, but I feel it was inevitable that it went this direction to some extent. These guys never signed on to the plan. I don't think half of them even knew what the entire plan was. No, and talking about people playing things close to the vest, the Emperor's never been really totally open with anybody on what was going on. He's trying to, he's a puppet master, he's pulling a lot of strings, but does anybody really know and are they on board with what the overall mission is?
You know who I think would fall into that category, interestingly enough, is the Sisters of Silence. Because they're
From what
the
aspect?
least because they're the least influenced, right? They are not psychically dominated by him. And I've thought about this. Why are they so devoted to this guy when they don't see him like everybody else does? He's just plain dude, He can't sit there and give them, honeyed words that are going to magically or psionically, sway them one way or another. Yet he was still able to have them become this almost religious order that sticks with him and is going to, it's just an unusual pairing. And I often thought, well, there must be something with it. And I kind of like the fact that there's that mystery there that you wonder, well, why are they so dedicated to this guy when they're not subject to the same stuff everybody else is? But anyway, I hope they do man, again, every time I hear you guys talk about this and we dive into this a little bit, I have to say again, I hope that they're able to realize the Warhammer universe as they go to create the entertainment endeavor, and I hope they're able to do it justice. I really do. There's such richness there.
Yeah,
It's
me too.
Tragic richness, and I think that's what's so beautiful.
Yeah, which brings us to, I think, our next topic, right? Because we're talking about like how do you bring some of these worlds to television and movies, and let's talk about The Mandalorian. Right?
You know
Season
exactly where I was going. Yes.
Yeah, season 1, high hopes. It was like, this was okay. I was digging it. Season 2 felt a little bit like, all right, let's put in a bunch of cameos and we'll see where this is going. And it was like we got all these different people in there or whatever. And we're like, yeah, okay, it was fine, but it wasn't season 1. And season 3, what is going on here? You know what I mean? Like some of this writing has been amateurish at best.
I like
Abysmal,
it.
you
I
know,
like it when he's a simple voice actor in a suit and is a secondary character on the show named for him. It's awesome. As you can see, I hate the show.
Yeah.
Toys behind me. Yeah, it's pretty bad. I have no hope for the future at this point.
Yeah, I don't know what to hope for with that, you know. It's another one of the now, even in season 1 and 2, I still think the bookends are the best parts of those seasons. I think that's really it. And if I could go back and tell myself one thing, it'd be just skip the rest of it. Watch the episodes with Bill Burr because he's funny. But
so good. Yeah, it was a good one.
But the other stuff, man.
Yeah, and there was stuff. You're right. There's stuff in there that is just good enough to keep us coming back, right? So it's not all doom and gloom. It's not all stuff. This is terrible. But man, this third season, like, there's some things I like. Let's talk about what we like. I like the fact that the Mandalorians now have like a place they can call their home, right? As they go to try and take back Mandalore. Cool. Like, I'm digging that. That's a cool aspect. Tatooine too, Electric Boogaloo. I kind of like that aspect of it, and we're bringing these different tribes together, and I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. I could do without the low rent Darth Vader. I love Gus Fring, but just sticking Gus Fring in Darth Vader's suit and letting him be, a less scary version of Gus Fring is not really doing it for me. You know what I mean? I'm like, okay, you got to have a bad guy. He's a name.
He was his own unique character. Why did you have to try and make him into Darth Vader? It's like he was a fine character when he was first introduced. He was unique individual. He had his own personality. He was different. He's nothing like Darth Vader. Darth Vader has a whole backstory of tragedy that made him into Darth Vader. To take it and just say, well, we're just going to pour him into this suit that vaguely looks like Darth Vader's suit. And look, he can fly. Awesome. Yeah. It's like, it's the worst.
They can fly now? They can fly now.
They can fly now. Yeah. Lazy.
I'm really tired of it seems like there's so much of the Batman 60s era Batman villain kind of thing. The 60s era Batman kind of thing where he shows up
camp, take
him, and all that crap, and then he flies away and his henchmen come in and you expect the bang bam kind of sound effect.
And John Favreau got his sign off moment with overheating the barrels of his assault cannon.
I would admit, I really liked the way that gun was overheating. I was like, okay, like that was pretty well done.
The overheating's fine, but I mean, I never felt.
I wasn't invested in him. I didn't care.
I wasn't. No, I really didn't. I really did not care, and I felt bad that way because I like John Favreau. And I wanted to feel connected to his character, but I really didn't care. As a matter of fact, the thing I was upset at the most was here's these new troopers showing up in Beskar. And for some reason, their Beskar armor is just as bad as regular Stormtrooper armor.
Yeah, it's just like, I thought this it's a Beskar alloy, really. So it's not pure Beskar.
It wasn't as bad. They were shrugging off some shots.
Yeah, but even
like regular Stormtroopers are dropping like flies.
If
these
you
guys
rewatch that episode,
tell me what.
Yeah, I know. Tell me what.
You can't make me. I won't do it.
What the numbers difference is between those with the Beskar alloy and him laying on the ground.
And then they brought out those crappy Imperial guards that they had from the new trilogy. That was. Those guys were lame when Adam Driver had to fight them. Now they're lame again, but they kill actually a character who had some.
Yeah, I just feel like on paper, these guys were writing the script or planning this episode. They're like, this is going to be so cool. And it just didn't meet the expectations I'm sure they had in their minds of how cool it was going to be. You know what I mean?
You know what all these stories look like to me?
Sorry, go ahead.
Pardon me. You know what all these stories look like to me? Is that none of them had a point from the very beginning. As they're writing, they're just, they get to the next stopping point and they're like, well, let's add this in and let's add this in. Or Sean, I think you made a point when we talked before about this, about when you're starting to throw cameos in there, it's because you have a weak storyline.
Lizzo and Jack Black. Yeah.
And I just think that's where the Mandalorian, and frankly, I think that's where a lot of the Star Wars has been. I think Andor had a point. We all know what the end point
Right.
of Andor is, and we know where that's going. And so the story picked up steam as it went along, because how do we get to that particular end point? But the Mandalorian just, I don't know. It's just not, it's not hitting it.
Yeah,
No.
and do you know what Andor, like, let's piece it together. Why is Andor so successful when these other ones
it
aren't?
wasn't,
Right? Because
according
hold on,
to
let
the
me finish. Because Andor has nothing. There's no Jedi in it. There's no like really
Right.
cool Mandalorians
story.
in it. It's just it's like some rebel spies. One of the coolest characters in there's a freaking senator who goes to parties.
Right.
You know what I mean? Oh, and an antique dealer who uses old radios and stuff like that. And Andor's not that great as a person. You know what I mean? He's not a hero. He's kind of a jerk. You know what I'm saying? He uses people, and he's not the hero that he eventually ends up being.
Scoundrel.
But it's written so well. There's nothing extra in it. And like with The Mandalorian, it feels like, oh, let's stick this person in there. And I think The Mandalorian does have a point. I think the problem is they're not sticking to that point because they want to put all this other cool stuff into the show. Like, oh, let's put Lizzo and Jack Black in there, and let's put, a little mech for Baby Yoda to ride around in, and none of that is the point of the story.
IG-11 thing. Oh man,
that's exactly right, Mark. When you talk about that, that's what I'm thinking of when I watch The Mandalorian. You hit it on the head. I feel like I'm watching a commercial. I feel like I'm watching a Nickelodeon-made children's show that's made to drive toy sales and stuff like that. Andor has cost. Andor had people who died, and there was change that happened.
And there's nothing in there that's meant to be funny.
No,
they're not trying to hit my funny bone at all.
One of the most interesting things is Mother died of old age.
well, Mandalorian feels like, you mentioned the Three's Company thing. That feels like Three's Company, where at the end of every episode it goes back to neutral. Everything goes back to the way it was. Baby Yoda's gone. Oh, there's cost with that. Everybody cries. Nope, he's back. IG-11 dies. Oh, nope. We're getting him back. And better, now Baby Yoda's driving him.
See, I will say this. I'm glad they did not bring IG-88 back because he self-destructed. Like I was like,
IG-11.
I was like, okay, that makes IG-11. That did make more sense. That it's like, okay, now he's remote control and it's a combat chassis rather than an actual droid.
But
let's that was way better than what they could have done.
Let's address the elephant turd in the room.
No.
Yeah, let's address that.
No, yes. And he's like squishing fruit at the fruit stand because he doesn't know how money works.
They did the no squeezy garbage again.
They did. No squeezy. Bad baby.
Squeezy. Bad baby.
Every time I see that, for some reason, I think of Mark. I think Mark would drive that into that. No, he would drive that saying into the ground. He would use that so much. Bad baby.
Only if Drew got upset by me saying it.
It was so atrocious.
It's exactly
I had heard rumors that they were going to stick him in a combat chassis / Walker IG-11, and I was like, man, that is the lamest garbage. Well, let's see if he'll fit. What do you mean? Let's see if he'll fit. Of course he's going to fit. Look at the. What are you, dumb? I mean, come on. Let's see if he'll fit. And the Mando.
Oh my gosh, he does.
All he had to do was actually be his father and say, no, I don't want him in a droid that tried to kill him. Don't put him in there. I'm his ward or his father or whatever.
No, because the closer he is to danger, the further he is from harm.
The friggin' kid can lift up a rhino with his hands. So 2 seasons ago. So what the heck,
Yeah, but then he gets really sleepy.
Well, what you were talking, he got sleepy after. But what you were talking about, Sean, you said this in a previous episode, and I agree with you. The Lone Wolf and Cub / bounty hunter / Clint Eastwood vibe,
gunslinger, man with no name.
Yeah, gunslinger in the first season. The problem is that was something they just for whatever reason, whether it's toxic masculinity or they don't want to do whatever, they didn't want to run with that, so they had to find a way that was the hook that got the majority of the audience is like, oh, this show's baller, I like it. I'm going to enjoy this. And then they did what they always do, the bait and switch. They're like, okay, but now we're going to talk about we're going to talk about politics, and we're going to talk about feelings, and we're going to talk about this, and we're going to talk. Where?
But see, that's
where
the
is the
thing.
gunslinger? Where'd he go?
I think that originally the idea was going to be a specific arc, and that was it. And the arc was
and
going
now
to
it's
be
3 seasons in.
well, no, not that. I think it's that once it became a hit that way, especially with Baby Yoda, and every lady out there was talking, "Oh, I want a Baby Yoda. I got to have a plushie Baby Yoda. I got to have one of
But
those."
that's fine.
The guys, no, because the guys in marketing then take. No, I'm not kidding. The guys in marketing, right? The guys in marketing take over, and now that becomes the focus. Because
I never took his ass out of the box. He can stay in there forever.
And now you'll get an IG-11 that he can fit into.
Oh,
I
that'd be
have
awesome.
an IG-11, but no, that's coming. I guarantee that toy will be made.
Right.
Oh, it is. Yeah, I'm sure
Yeah.
it is. And that's the point. Is that's what's
Terrible.
driving that show. With Andor, you don't have that. There's no character in there where the marketing guys are, latching onto it and saying, "Oh, we got to have that. Put that more on there. We got to."
How many Andor toys are there? Zero. There's none for the show.
Right. You don't see Andor doing flips every show. I hate
Next season.
I hate
Next season,
that. I hate that. I know they're going to do it every episode.
Yep.
Where Baby Yoda does a flip into somebody's arms. And notice it's almost always a lady, right? It's always some.
He
lady
did it with Lizzo.
jumping.
Yeah, he did
Right,
it. Yep,
and he did it with what's her face, the mechanic lady.
Yes, the mechanic lady
That's
out of
right,
the
yeah.
ship. Yes.
And that's.
Tracy Ullman, is that the actress? Yeah.
No, was it Tracy Ullman? No.
No, it was the Strangers with Candy
Strangers with Candy.
actress.
her, okay.
Yeah, and but that's what's driving it, man. That they took that over and they said
Right,
no.
and that's what I mean. Like, I think they're trying to tell a story, personally, of Bo-Katan reuniting and retaking. Yeah. Oh no! Don't let me finish my sentence. Thank you.
Yeah.
Of her becoming the ruler of Mandalore and trying to bring everybody back together. I think that's the real story. All the rest of this is tangential. And we're like, oh, we got Carl Weathers. Let's give him a part. Oh, we got these people. Let's put them in for a thing. And it's like you said, we started out with this lone gunslinger, and you think that's who the Mandalorian is about, but maybe not. Maybe it's going to end up being about the restoration of Mandalore under Bo-Katan. I don't know. That's this is me thinking out loud.
It's definitely going to be that. It's definitely going to be that.
Right, but what's all this other stuff doing in there? You know what I mean? It's like, let's put famous people and sell some toys, and it's not tight.
It waters down the story so that if it had been able to be what it was going to be, where you had change to the story, where Baby Yoda's no longer there, you don't have IG-11, characters come and go, people die, and that sort of thing. Then Bo-Katan doing her thing with Mandalore and trying to become the Mandalorian now takes on a different tone. It's a journey. You can still check in with Yoda and all that. And I'm sure that was the original plan. And then when probably Kathleen Kennedy and the boys in the marketing department got a hold of it,
Amanat or whoever else,
it became just this thing now, which is just really frustrating. Really frustrating.
And the frustrating part of it is I'm looking right up at my shelf at the 40 plus volumes of Lone Wolf and Cub. You can't tell me you can't make a story about that. I mean, and you could go off I have other stories of like the side characters and all the other stuff. There's so much story there that could have been done that they could have just stuck to the formula, and they just decided to look, nope, we're going to inject. We gotta get our ESG in. We're gonna do what we're gonna do, and they just took a story, and now they've done exactly what they did with Obi-Wan, exactly what they did with the other series, except for Andor, which is pretty universally if you look at what the critics say, Andor was a failure. As far as I'm concerned, it's the best damn thing they've done for Star Wars since Rogue One.
Yeah, I agree.
That bait and switch that they do, where they start off on a path that hits all the member berries. And then they, a season and a half in, they're like, well, here we go. Time to switch the gears. It's awful. And it's leading them to failure. And it saddens me because I like the property. You hear me, Disney? I like Star Wars. But the fact that you guys can't get your heads out of your asses and make sure that you tell stories again that are entertaining to your audience without insulting them at the same time, it's just a recipe for failure. You're never going to win.
Yeah, when the priority is you're making sales, when the priority is the boys in the marketing department, right? Then you've lost sight of what you're trying to do. If
Yeah.
you tell the story right, the sales
It
will
happens.
happen, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it happened with the original movies, where you told the original movies, and then my God, the action figures flew off shelves. Um, yeah, look, I'm going back to the idea that they've lost sight. But Disney never had sight. If I'm honest, Disney never had.
Right.
Disney
Yeah.
as a
Agreed.
construct has just always been about
Yeah.
profit, and they want to exploit it for as much as they can. So that's just is what it
It's
is.
not true. There
Right,
was
but
a
stop
time-
killing
there
the
was-
golden goose and give these properties to creative people who have passion and love it, and leave them alone and let them make the stuff. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because I don't
Yeah.
feel like John Favreau came up with these terrible ideas. I feel
think he
like
did.
people are interfering with John Favreau and Filoni. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I
oh
agree.
no, make sure you
I
put
agree.
this in. Hey, that no squeezy alien pulled well from the
It
sequel
makes my head
trilogy.
hurt
Let's
just when
put
you
one of
say
them
it.
in there
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That has got to become a meme.
Yeah.
I mean, look,
Bad baby, no squeezy.
I'm just
I
waiting.
like
I'm waiting for Star Wars Babies as a series to come out, where we have a little infant Darth Vader.
Yep. Mhm.
You know,
They're all hanging out in the galactic kindergarten.
Like Muppet
Yeah.
babies.
Solve
just wait
mysteries.
for the New
Yeah.
Republic show. The New Republic show sounds like it's going to go down that path. And then what is the not the Bad Batch? The what's the one
The Good Batch.
where it's a bunch of kids?
The okay batch.
Kids.
The average.
Yeah,
batch.
yeah. Skeleton Crew, I think that one
Skeleton
is.
Crew, yes. Skeleton Crew. It's children. It's like, so you what? Huh? So you got an adult leading a bunch of children? You
Right,
think
but that
that's
trailer
really
looked pretty dark. And here's the thing: like, you hear the premise, you're like, "Oh, this is going to be terrible." That could be another Andor that comes out of left field.
But
It
see,
could
okay,
be-
but
Like,
now
if they do it right, and I don't know who's doing it. All I've seen is like the teaser trailer. But again, like,
Yeah.
you know, I
But
don't want
that-
to dismiss it on the premise because any story can be a good one despite the premise.
I see your point, but my trust
Sure.
is low.
But I am curious
Agreed.
though, because when we compare a lot of this to Andor, because we're saying, okay, a lot of what Star Wars has put out has been subpar. And then Andor came out. Now, granted, when Andor
Mhm.
came out, I was a little like, I don't know. But as it went on, I found myself more and more invested in the story. I found the characters more and more compelling. And like you say, Mark, one of the most fascinating characters in the show is a senator that goes to parties, and there's just this
Yeah.
political intrigue side of it that's just captivating. But I am concerned now. Like, what's going to happen with that when we get to season 2? Are they really driven in Andor because they've already done the end story for Cassian? Like, we know how it ends for him.
I think that's part of it. I think they can't write anything extra because the story is already written. So they just have to tell the story in between they can't make it not make sense. Like, he can't become some
Right.
super friendly guy because you saw him at the end. He was the guy that killed people in an alley. Still.
Right.
You
Right.
know, so they
Yeah.
can't too narrow. They can't go too far off that path because it won't only not make sense. It just, there's no way to explain it. Not even the best writer could write their way around that, you know?
Right. Yeah.
Right, but
yeah.
that's one of the things I love about, you know, Rogue One and you know, Andor. You don't resist an empire by being just the good guy. You know what I mean?
No.
The fact that they're like, oh, we want the empire to crank down on the regular folks because that'll get them angry and that'll put them on our side. Or,
Yeah.
Oh no, my friend that I know who's you know can't climb out of this alley. Well, I can't leave him here to tell anybody what he knows, so I'm going to murder him. You know what I mean? Like, et cetera, et cetera. There's things that the rebels are doing
Yeah.
that lean a little bit more towards Saul Guerrero's side of the fence than you know.
I was
Princess
just
Leia's side of the
I was
fence.
just so grateful there was something that grew up with us.
Yeah.
You know, so it wasn't that we were continually being forced to go back to 1977.
Yeah.
But there was something that had finally grown with us to give us something more, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's, you know, and that's the tragedy of it, is that such a reaction to what they're doing. If people didn't really care about it because it had grown with them, and the fans, they really feel like it's something of theirs, right? Like it belongs to us in some respect because we're the reason why it became successful, because we stuck with it and we gave it to our kids and their kids are now, we're pushing it forward. They would not have this success without us. And to see them say, well, you all don't matter. It's like, well, really? Because we're the whole reason why you are where you're at.
Yeah, exactly.
You
Exactly.
can't-
And they'll
you
lose
can't
it.
Tell me I don't matter, and then take credit for the success that you didn't make. We made you successful. We're
Yeah,
the ones
I mean,
that-
when you tell half the fan base that they don't matter,
Yeah.
I mean, it's emperor level hubris on display, right?
Oh, we're going back there. Look at that.
Oh,
Gotta get that
I
dig in.
thought he meant Palpatine.
I know which emperor he was talking about. And
Why not both?
Whichever. I
Well,
think they're both
Palpatine,
awesome.
yeah, there was never any doubt with Palpatine. There's no wiggle room for Palpatine. He's
Nah,
pretty
I
much
just
did what he
pictured
was
I just
doing.
pictured Disney going evacuate to a moment of triumph.
That's exactly how
This
they
sequel
think.
trilogy is going to be great.
That's exactly how they think. It's like, why would we evacuate in our moment of triumph as someone's shooting a
Reboot?
photon
Reboot
torpedo
in our
down their
moment of
corner?
triumph?
Yes.
This Ray Johnson character is gonna put us on the map.
No, but I think one of Sean's points many episodes ago was, Sean was happy to see the fact that Star Wars came out with other things, that it wasn't this Jedi driven, we don't have to have lightsaber battles and everything.
Yeah.
Let's
They-
explore this other
they
space.
help.
And I think at the time I
Yeah.
poo-pooed it a bit, and look, it is what it is. But I think Sean's point is valid, because I find myself, as a person who enjoyed the Star Wars universe, and I do use that in the past tense, I find myself wanting more, and a lot of these shows just aren't delivering even that.
Right.
Andor did, and I give it credit for that. I know Andor was seen as a critical failure, as you point out, Rich, but the people who watched it, the people who enjoyed it, it
Like it,
gained a
yeah.
following. And like one person said, Andor was the show I didn't know that I needed. And then when you find it, you were like, okay, I need more of this show. And that's where I'm at with that too. Because
Yeah.
Rich, your point, I mean, we made Star Wars, not the four of us, but those of us who grew up in that
age group.
right
Our generation.
we
Yeah.
made it what it is. And yeah, I mean, now like my my kids are appreciate the Star Wars universe, but now they're being given things that are just ugh,
They don't rise to the level of what they should be, and
That's right.
it's funny that you mentioned that Disney has never, so I think it was you, Kelly, said Disney never, like, they've always been the way they were. They haven't. There was a time in between the time they went from classical animation to where they went to everything being computer generated. There was a time there that's when they started to lose their way. And it's, like if you look at old movies like Hercules and even up to like things like Moana and stuff like that, there's good stories there. There's still people who care. There's still people. And I went to the parks. I've been to the parks dozens of times. And, it used to be a family vacation for us. And it was very much, you'd go there and you'd be able to like talk to the animators and talk to some of the people that were there that were involved in the process, because they had them out there, doing sketches and things like that. And you could
I was
see
going to
that
say,
there was,
because they'd look up at you and go, how'd you get in here?
This isn't the park.
He's not Orca. But no, they'd have them there for like special events and stuff like that. And you could go and get a sketch done by a Disney animator. And you talk to them and you'd see that they actually
They had 10-year-old Chinese kids at the park.
No. They had actually paid people who were in America. They weren't in a slave farm in China. But there was still a love of what they did, and there was a kind of a dedication to the history. And that's now gone. It's just about investors and profit margins.
Yeah.
And
kind of with that, remember when Star Wars came out in 77, 78, right?
Mhm.
Making movies back then, like all the stuff they did, we didn't know how they did it, right?
Right.
It's, models and matte paintings and all of this. And that was the thing about science fiction and especially Star Wars. You were like, wow, how did they do this?
Yeah.
This lived in science fiction universe, whereas everybody was used to Star Trek with the clean lines and Buck Rogers and that. And so Star Trek was something new, or Star Wars was something new and something different. It was this lived in universe that they pulled off. Fast forward 30, 40 years, whatever it is, everybody knows about CGI. Everybody knows how they do everything.
Yeah.
Some of that mystery is gone. And I think this generation the current ones that grew up on all this, like, you know, it's you can't wow us with visuals anymore.
I'm not impressed.
Right?
I'm not impressed.
No, I'm just saying, like, you know, it used to be the visual effects could overcome maybe some detriments in other areas, like your acting or your script or whatever. You're like, whatever, it was a spectacle. Yeah. Nowadays, everything is visually a spectacle. You know, with the Avatar and some of these other things, and like even low budget movies can pull off some really amazing things, and we all understand that they could do that. And I don't want to minimize the effects, because the effects are amazing and they're expensive and time consuming, and I get all that. But again, that the bar has been set, like, okay, if you know, is it good CGI or is it bad CGI, right? Is it Sharknado or is it good?
But and to your point, the lack of story shines through, because now everything is great visually.
Yes.
Where the story is weak, it now just becomes much more obvious. It's pointed out.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm trying to say.
100%. Yeah. Sharknado was a good story, by the way.
Sharknado is an impressive six.
Sharknado is nothing but win.
I'm impressed.
You know what
coming back to the well.
You know what I think precipitated all that was Attack of the Killer Tomatoes.
What, Sharknado?
100%. Yeah, Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. Yeah,
where it's just a ridiculous premise for the sake of being ridiculous. You know, and I think that
how's that a whole lot different than Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
Yeah,
right. That's a ridiculous premise that you're like, what? And you know, but darn if it didn't capture
billion dollar
capture the attention of America.
TMNT had some cool stuff in it, though. Sharknado was just ridiculous. A shark flying at you out of a tornado and a dude running at it with a chainsaw.
Those actors from Starship Troopers need jobs too. You know, they got to come back. Tara Reid ain't gonna sell herself just based on.
That's right. Yeah, Tiffany's not down at the mall doing concerts like she was in the '80s. So
you know, I'll tell you what. Starship Troopers deserved much better as far as a universe being built. And, what fantastic could have been. It really, and I love the fact that the guy who made RoboCop and Total Recall, right, and Starship Troopers was trying to lampoon and destroy. That entire, and all it did every time we sat in the theater and saw any of his movies,
great.
Oh my God, that is awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'd buy that for $1.
The torture scene in RoboCop where they got him on the floor and they're just blowing his parts off. It's like it was supposed to be over the top and offensive, and everyone's like, "That's great!"
Everyone's like, "Oh man, that is amazing!" And then he turns into a murder robot, you know, with revenge and everything. I'm like, "Oh yes."
Yeah, and the whole N209 scene where they're doing the demonstration, that is one of the funniest ones ever.
I know.
Yes.
I know. I was not terrified at all. I was like,
I need a volunteer.
I dropped the gun. I swear I dropped the gun. Drop the gun. I dropped it.
Oh, Ed 209. Looks like a big microphone.
It's fantastic. The fact that Frank Miller had anything to do with that script is amazing to me.
I thought his was RoboCop 2.
RoboCop 2. That's where Ed 209 was. Yeah.
No, he was in the first one.
He was in the first one.
No, second one.
First one. He was in the
Ed
first
209,
one.
second one. Ed 209, second one.
Look, you can
Rich,
say it.
You are incorrect. Stop digging.
Yeah. You're gonna have to walk that back pretty hard, my friend.
Yep.
Cop 2 was the one that Frank Miller was involved in.
Nobody disagrees with that. We're saying Ed 209 was in the first movie.
Oh, now he cuts out. Yeah.
Oh wait, no, stop. You are correct. I had forgotten that they had.
We know.
No. I had forgotten that they put the drug addict in the Ed 209 chassis in the second one.
The second one. Yes,
that's right.
That's what I was thinking of.
Because Ed 209 was so popular from the first movie.
Correct. And the guy they used as the drug addict or the drug dealer or whatever in the second one was also the bad guy from Manhunter.
Yes, correct. Yes.
Right, but to kind of bring all this back together, I am still flummoxed and amazed at how bad you can mess up Star Wars. You know, I mean, of all the properties, like, oh, let's spend a couple $1 billion to acquire Star Wars.
They have a proven record of being able to do this.
and like, you know, Disney, I'm like, hey, you've spent 100 years putting out good entertainment that America loves, right? You know, so like going into this, I was not like, you know, oh no, this is going to be awful.
Yeah.
And yet, looking back, it's been pretty awful. They've had way more losses than they've had wins. Even if it's been profitable, it doesn't make the movie good.
The question
You know
is,
what I mean?
what changed? What changed in between that first 100 years and the last 20 years? What changed? And I have a feeling I know what changed. But I would like to hear what you guys think changed at Disney. What changed?
I don't know.
Same thing
don't
that
know.
changes at every company, Rich, in my opinion. The same
Go
thing
ahead.
that changes at every company, which is they lose sight of their purpose for existing. Right? Every company, and I'm a firm believer in this, and it's not I was presented with this idea before, but it's every company has a purpose for existing. It's why, right? And the further a company gets away from its founder, the more fuzzy that why becomes. And Disney is far away from the founder and sort of its purpose for existing. So it, like many other companies, simply exists now with what is thought of as the reason for any company's existence: shareholder value.
Let's
And
make
that's
money.
that's all they're trying to do anymore. How do we get a return on the investment? We invested $1 billion in Star Wars. How do we get our billion plus back? And I think that's the issue at the end of the day. Because when we talk about all the losses that they've had, and then we see their announcement of new projects, and we see them doubling down on the same sort of management or leadership structure that's supposed to spearhead that coming out, you're thinking, okay, well, you haven't learned any lessons, have you? You know, because you didn't make any changes to be able to achieve a different result.
It's not our fault. It's
That's
never
right.
our fault.
And look, I mean, when we talk about something like Andor, okay, because you would say, okay, if everything's a failure, why do you like Andor? Because even somebody who is completely inept at some point will score a win. You know, the blind squirrel finds a nut eventually, but just because you found one nut doesn't make you successful.
I think that's an excellent why I asked the question, because I knew you'd have some very good commentary on that particular point. And
Yeah, you're my favorite now too, Kelly.
and to follow up on that though, I think Andor, that was a project that no one expected to have any legs at Disney. That was one they're like, well, we'll do this, and it'll be a side project. Someone talked them into it, and lo and behold, it's the best thing they've made since the last best thing they made, which was Rogue One. It's ridiculous.
It's funny, Rogue One, because a friend of mine saw Rogue One before I did, and she said she hated it. And she just didn't like anything about it. I don't like how it ended. I hated the whole thing.
Was
and
she a Star Wars fan or no?
No.
Yeah.
But I went and saw it, and I was like, this is the best thing I have ever seen. This is, since the original series is fantastic.
It was a
and then she's the same one who came to me. She saw Top Gun Maverick, and she said, "Oh my God, fantastic movie, loved it." And I finally go and see it, and look, if you haven't seen it, it's streaming now, and that's your own problem. But when Maverick's plane got shot down, I just said to myself, no, she loved it, so he's still alive. Nothing bad happened.
Yeah.
He'll be fine.
Yeah, this movie's going to work out in the end. So
that movie pissed me off. Have you guys seen Icons Uncovered on Hulu?
No.
What is that about?
Icons Uncovered is a documentary series about various popular culture things, but they had one on Star Wars. It's a series of documentaries, so it was like 6 episodes or something like that. And they're doing one on the Marvel Cinematic Universe now. Check that out. Helena and I watch. Helena really likes that, and we've been watching that when it comes out during the week. It comes out once a week, and really interesting to watch that and see what because they interview everybody who's involved with. I'm talking about the real people, not the ones at the top who are going to talk nice about everybody. I'm talking about the ones, below, right? And really interesting to see how that stuff happened. And you know what? The one thing you get out of this whole thing is that no matter who created what, if it gets past the writer of a novel, okay, so it goes into like making a movie or something where it's some sort of collaborative world effort, right? It is mere fortune that anything ever gets done or is done successfully. It reminds me of one of the guys who worked in the Carter administration, wrote a book talking about how he worked in the White House there. And he kept waiting to find the intelligent person, the one who was smart, the one who was actually going to save the world because they were intelligent and knew how things worked and all that. And he said no matter how far up the chain he got, no one was that. No one was that person. They were all exactly the same. They were all just as incompetent as anybody else. And I truly think that encapsulates humanity, that we are absolutely, unbelievably fortunate to have lasted this long.
Yes, true.
Because, you know, we're just amazingly unwise.
Well, just look at, we've learned nothing from.
No, we haven't.
The Emperor. I know you were going to say that.
War games, every film in popular culture.
Dude.
And that will be the downfall of all of us.
I agree. That exactly will be the downfall of us. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, this has been another exciting episode of Kelly and Friends. I hope you all will join us next time.
Oh, wow. Kelly gets the intro and the outro. Good job, Kelly.
Good to go, K-Man.
Yep. On that happy note, I guess we're out.
All right, guys.
Bye.
This concludes our Speak Nerd and Enter broadcast.